myself. I know.
Allah Akbar!
No, I'm number one on the kill list for Iran.
Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and discovering that the price of almost everything around you has suddenly started rising. Gasoline, food, electricity, even the products on supermarket shelves. Not because of a global war, not because the world's oil has run out, but because of one narrow strip of water, barely 21 miles wide. Every single day, nearly 1/5 of the world's oil passes through this tiny gateway. If it were ever blocked, even for a short time, the shockwaves wouldn't stop in the Middle East. They would reach New York, London, Tokyo, Beijing, and eventually your own home. And standing at the center of this global lifeline is one nation, a country that has endured decades of sanctions, diplomatic isolation, military pressure, cyber attacks, and repeated threats, yet has never surrendered control of the region that keeps the world's energy flowing. But how did Iran gain such extraordinary strategic leverage? Why are Bandar Abbas, Qeshm Island, Kharg Island, Bushehr, and the Strait of Hormuz considered some of the most important places on Earth? And why has this narrow waterway remained at the heart of global tensions for generations? Because to understand why the world keeps watching Iran, you first have to understand the geography that quietly shapes the global economy. This is the story of the Strait of Hormuz. At first glance, the Strait of Hormuz doesn't look extraordinary. On a map, it's just a narrow ribbon of water separating southern Iran from the Arabian Peninsula. At its narrowest point, the strait is only about 21 miles, or 33 kilometers, wide. Yet within this seemingly ordinary passage lies one of the greatest strategic advantages any nation has ever possessed. Every day, thousands of commercial vessels travel across the world's oceans. But only a handful of maritime routes have the power to influence the global economy. The Strait of Hormuz is one of them. It connects the oil-rich Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea, creating the only direct maritime gateway for several of the world's largest energy producers. For countries such as Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, Qatar, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates, this narrow corridor is the primary route through which much of their energy reaches international markets. According to the US Energy Information Administration, roughly 1/5 of the world's petroleum liquids move through the Strait of Hormuz each day. In addition to crude oil, enormous volumes of liquefied natural gas, particularly from Qatar, also pass through these waters. Every tanker that safely exits the Persian Gulf helps fuel factories, power stations, airlines, shipping fleets, and millions of vehicles across Asia, Europe, and beyond. But geography is what makes this waterway truly extraordinary. Unlike wide oceans, where ships can easily change course, traffic inside the Strait of Hormuz is funneled into internationally recognized shipping lanes that are only a few miles wide in each direction. Hundreds of massive oil tankers and commercial vessels follow these carefully managed routes every year, making the strait one of the busiest and most strategically sensitive maritime corridors on Earth. And on the northern shoreline of this global energy gateway stands a country that overlooks nearly every ship entering or leaving the Persian Gulf. That country is Iran. Its coastline, islands, ports, and military positions have transformed simple geography into one of the most influential strategic advantages in modern history. To understand why the world pays such close attention whenever tensions rise in these waters, we first need to explore the country that sits at the gateway itself. Long before oil reshaped the modern world, before missiles, aircraft carriers, and international sanctions dominated the headlines, Iran possessed something that no government could manufacture and no rival could buy: its geography. Stretching across nearly 2,400 kilometers of coastline along the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, Iran occupies one of the most strategically valuable locations on Earth. Unlike many nations that depend on distant trade routes, Iran sits directly beside the maritime gateway that connects the energy-rich Persian Gulf to the open oceans. Every vessel leaving the Gulf must pass beneath the shadow of Iran's southern coastline before reaching the wider world. But Iran's advantage isn't defined by coastline alone. Scattered across these waters are islands, ports, and natural defensive positions that together form an interconnected strategic network. To the south lies Qeshm Island, the largest island in the Persian Gulf. Nearby sits Hormuz Island, overlooking one of the world's busiest shipping corridors. Farther northwest is Kharg Island, the backbone of Iran's crude oil export system. Along the mainland stands Bandar Abbas, the country's most important commercial port and naval hub. And farther up the coast, Bushehr represents another critical piece of Iran's long-term energy strategy. Individually, each of these locations is important. Together, they create a geographic system that few nations can match. This natural positioning has shaped Iran's security strategy for decades. While many countries invest enormous resources to project influence far beyond their borders, Iran begins with a strategic advantage that geography has provided for centuries. Every major power operating in the Persian Gulf, from global shipping companies to regional navies, must account for this reality. It is one of the reasons the Strait of Hormuz is never viewed as just another waterway. It is a region where geography, commerce, diplomacy, and military planning intersect every single day. And at the center of that system stands Bandar Abbas. More than just a coastal city, it has become the operational heart of southern Iran, a place where commercial trade, naval strategy, and the security of one of the world's most important shipping routes come together. Before we explore Iran's military capabilities or the global consequences of a crisis in the Strait of Hormuz, we first need to understand why Bandar Abbas has become the heartbeat of Iran's southern frontier. Before we continue, if you're enjoying documentaries that go beyond the headlines and explain the deeper forces shaping our world, consider subscribing. Your support helps us create more research-driven stories like this, stories that take weeks of investigation and bring global events into perspective. Every great maritime power has a city that quietly shapes its influence. For the United States, it is Norfolk. For Singapore, it is the Port of Singapore. And for Iran, that city is Bandar Abbas. Located on Iran's southern coast, directly facing the Strait of Hormuz, Bandar Abbas has grown into the country's most important commercial port, naval headquarters, and maritime logistics hub. It is here that international trade, energy transportation, and national security converge. From this coastline, Iran can observe one of the busiest shipping corridors on Earth, where thousands of commercial vessels, including some of the world's largest oil tankers, pass every year. But Bandar Abbas is far more than a commercial gateway. It serves as the principal base for the Islamic Republic of Iran Navy and hosts major facilities used by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy. While the regular Navy is responsible for broader maritime operations, the Irgix Navy focuses on protecting Iran's coastal waters and maintaining a strong presence throughout the Persian Gulf. Together, these forces make Bandar Abbas one of the most strategically significant military ports in the Middle East. Its importance is reinforced by geography. The city lies only a short distance from the Strait of Hormuz, allowing Iranian naval and coast guard assets to reach the shipping lanes within a relatively short time. For decades, military planners around the world have viewed this proximity as one of Iran's greatest strategic advantages. It allows Tehran to monitor developments in the Gulf while maintaining a rapid response capability close to one of the world's most critical maritime choke points. Yet Bandar Abbas is not only about defense. It is also one of Iran's busiest economic centers. Large commercial terminals handle containers, industrial goods, and regional trade that support millions of people across the country. Modern highways and railway connections link the port to Iran's interior, turning Bandar Abbas into a vital bridge between domestic industries and international markets. In many ways, Bandar Abbas is where Iran's economy and national security become inseparable. But just offshore lies an island that gives Iran an even greater strategic advantage. From the sea, it appears peaceful and mountainous, yet its location allows it to overlook the entrance to one of the most important waterways on the planet. That island is Qeshm, and without understanding its geography, it is impossible to understand why the Strait of Hormuz remains at the center of global attention. If Bandar Abbas is the operational heart of southern Iran, then Qeshm Island is its natural shield. Stretching for more than 130 kilometers, Qeshm is the largest island in the Persian Gulf. At first glance, it appears to be a rugged landscape of mountains, rocky cliffs, mangrove forests, and quiet fishing communities. But beneath that peaceful appearance lies one of the most strategically valuable pieces of land in the Middle East. Its importance comes from one simple fact: location. Qeshm sits only a short distance from the Strait of Hormuz, overlooking the narrow maritime corridor through which nearly 1/5 of the world's petroleum liquids move every day. From the island's southern coastline, international shipping lanes are remarkably close. Every oil tanker, container ship, LNG carrier, and commercial vessel entering or leaving the Persian Gulf passes through waters visible from this strategic position. For military planners, geography like this cannot be replaced. Unlike countries that must project power across thousands of kilometers of open ocean, Iran begins with a natural advantage. Qeshm allows surveillance systems, coastal defense assets, and naval forces based nearby to operate close to one of the world's busiest maritime choke points. Together with Bandar Abbas and neighboring islands, it forms part of a defensive network that has shaped Iran's maritime strategy for decades. But Qeshm is valuable for another reason. The island sits within a chain of strategic locations stretching across Iran's southern coastline. This network gives Tehran multiple observation points overlooking the Persian Gulf while supporting maritime trade, coastal security, and regional logistics. It is one of the reasons international naval forces operating in the region closely monitor activities around these waters whenever tensions rise. Yet, despite its strategic significance, Qeshm has never become famous around the world. Most people have never heard its name. They know the Strait of Hormuz, but not the island quietly watching over it. And while Qeshm helps Iran oversee one of the world's most important shipping routes, another island plays an entirely different role. Unlike Qeshm, its importance is measured not by the ships passing nearby, but by the oil leaving its shores. For decades, this single island has served as one of the pillars of Iran's economy, connecting its vast energy reserves to customers across the globe. That island is Kharg Island, the energy lifeline that has helped Iran endure decades of sanctions, conflict, and economic pressure. For decades, Iran's greatest strategic strength has not been hidden beneath mountains or buried deep underground. It has sailed across the sea. Nearly every barrel of crude oil exported by Iran begins its international journey from one small island in the Persian Gulf, Kharg Island. Although tiny compared to the vast territory of Iran, its importance is almost impossible to overstate. Located roughly 25 kilometers off Iran's northwestern Gulf coast, Kharg has long served as the country's principal crude oil export terminal. Massive storage tanks, offshore loading facilities, and specialized tanker berths transform this small island into one of the most valuable economic assets in the nation. Every day, enormous oil tankers arrive at Kharg before beginning their voyage toward customers across Asia and other global markets. For Iran, this island is far more than an export terminal. It is a financial lifeline. Oil exports have historically generated a substantial share of Iran's foreign currency earnings, funding industries, infrastructure, public services, and large sectors of the national economy. Even during years of intense international sanctions, when exports declined significantly, Kharg Island remained one of the country's most critical economic gateways. Maintaining its operation became essential not only for trade, but also for Iran's long-term economic resilience. Because of this importance, Kharg Island has repeatedly attracted international attention during periods of regional conflict. Throughout modern history, analysts have viewed the island as one of Iran's most strategically significant energy facilities, not simply because of the oil stored there, but because any prolonged disruption could directly affect Iran's export capacity and government revenues. This is precisely why energy markets around the world closely monitor developments involving Iran's southern coastline. When investors hear news about rising tensions in the Persian Gulf, Kharg Island is often one of the first locations they watch. Yet Kharg tells only one part of the story. Exporting oil is valuable only if ships can safely leave the Persian Gulf. Every tanker departing Kharg must eventually sail through the same narrow maritime corridor, the Strait of Hormuz. That means Iran's economic lifeline and the world's energy lifeline are deeply connected. One cannot function efficiently without the other. Together, they create a strategic relationship that has influenced global energy markets for decades. And while Kharg represents Iran's economic strength, another city farther west symbolizes something entirely different. It is the center of Iran's civilian nuclear energy program, a place that has become one of the most closely watched locations in international diplomacy. If Kharg Island represents Iran's economic lifeline, then Bushehr represents something far more complex. It is the city that transformed Iran from a regional energy producer into a nation at the center of one of the world's longest-running geopolitical disputes. Situated along Iran's southwestern coastline on the Persian Gulf, Bushehr is home to the country's first and only operating nuclear power plant. Unlike oil terminals that export energy to the world, the Bushehr nuclear power plant was built to generate electricity for domestic use. Developed with Russian assistance after years of delays, the facility became operational in the early 2010s and today supplies a portion of Iran's civilian electricity needs under international safeguards administered by the International Atomic Energy Agency. Yet Bushehr's importance extends far beyond electricity. Its existence symbolizes Iran's determination to develop advanced nuclear technology, despite decades of sanctions, diplomatic pressure, and international scrutiny. While Iran maintains that its nuclear program is intended for peaceful purposes, many Western governments, including the United States and Israel, have long expressed concern that elements of Iran's broader nuclear activities could shorten the time required to produce weapons-grade nuclear material if Tehran ever chose to pursue that path. Iran has consistently denied seeking nuclear weapons, making the issue one of the most contested and closely monitored security challenges in modern international politics. This disagreement has shaped global diplomacy for more than 2 decades. Negotiations, economic sanctions, cyber operations, and international inspections have all become part of an ongoing effort to influence Iran's nuclear trajectory. Few countries in the modern era have faced such sustained economic pressure while simultaneously continuing to invest in strategic industries, missile development, domestic manufacturing, and energy infrastructure. Whether viewed as resilience, deterrence, or strategic necessity depends largely on the perspective of the observer, but there is little disagreement that these pressures have profoundly shaped Iran's national strategy. And that strategy cannot be understood by looking at Bushehr alone. Iran's nuclear facilities, strategic ports, oil terminals, and military infrastructure all serve a broader objective, ensuring that no external pressure can easily isolate or dictate the country's future. This is where geography, economics, technology, and national security begin to merge into a single strategic doctrine. But none of these advantages would carry the same global weight without one critical reality. Iran sits beside the Strait of Hormuz, the maritime gateway through which a significant share of the world's energy supply continues to flow every single day. For more than 4 decades, Iran has lived under one of the most extensive sanctions regimes in modern history. Different governments, different administrations, and different international coalitions have imposed restrictions targeting its banking system, oil exports, shipping industry, technology imports, and financial networks. The expectation behind many of these measures was straightforward. Sustained economic pressure would eventually force Tehran to change its strategic behavior. Yet history unfolded differently. There is no question that sanctions imposed enormous costs on Iran. Inflation surged, foreign investment declined, access to advanced technology became more difficult, and millions of ordinary Iranians felt the economic consequences in their daily lives. But while sanctions weakened parts of the economy, they did not fundamentally alter Iran's long-term strategic objectives. Instead, Iran gradually adapted. Unable to rely on unrestricted international trade, the country expanded domestic manufacturing in several sectors, invested in indigenous defense industries, diversified regional trade partnerships, and searched for alternative export routes and financial mechanisms. Energy remained central to that strategy, but geography remained its greatest advantage. As long as Iran controlled the northern coastline of the Strait of Hormuz and maintained critical infrastructure at Bandar Abbas, Qeshm, Kharg, and other strategic locations, it continued to possess leverage that few sanctioned nations could claim. Military strategy evolved as well. Rather than attempting to match larger powers ship for ship or aircraft for aircraft, Iran increasingly emphasized asymmetric capabilities: coastal defense systems, naval fast attack craft, unmanned aerial systems, long-range missiles, and layered deterrents designed to complicate any potential military confrontation in the Persian Gulf. Many defense analysts describe this approach not as an attempt to dominate conventional warfare, but to raise the potential cost of conflict for any adversary operating near Iran's coastline. That distinction matters. Iran's greatest strength has never depended solely on the size of its military or the scale of its economy. It comes from the combination of geography, energy resources, strategic infrastructure, and a doctrine built around deterrence rather than global power projection. Together, these factors have allowed Tehran to remain one of the Middle East's most influential geopolitical actors, despite decades of sustained external pressure. But perhaps the most important question still remains unanswered. What would actually happen if tensions escalated to the point where ships could no longer move freely through the Strait of Hormuz? The answer would not affect Iran alone. It would reach financial markets, supply chains, fuel stations, factories, and households across the entire world. Every day, thousands of vessels cross the world's oceans. Most can be rerouted if necessary, but the Strait of Hormuz is different. It is not simply another shipping lane, it is one of the world's most critical energy choke points. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, roughly 1/5 of global petroleum liquids transit this narrow passage each day, while Qatar also exports a substantial portion of its liquefied natural gas through the same corridor. For decades, the uninterrupted flow of these shipments has been one of the invisible foundations of the global economy. Now imagine that flow suddenly slows or stops. The first impact would likely be felt in global energy markets. Oil prices could rise sharply as traders react to uncertainty, while insurance costs for commercial shipping would increase significantly. Tankers might be forced to wait, reroute where possible, or suspend operations until the security situation becomes clearer. Even countries that import little or no oil directly from the Persian Gulf could still experience rising fuel costs because energy markets are globally interconnected. But the consequences would not end there. Modern economies depend on affordable energy. Higher oil prices increase transportation costs, making it more expensive to move food, raw materials, industrial equipment, and consumer goods around the world. Airlines face higher fuel bills, manufacturers pay more to operate factories, shipping companies pass additional costs to businesses, and those costs often reach consumers through higher prices. Inflation can accelerate, central banks may face difficult policy decisions, and financial markets often respond with increased volatility. Some Gulf producers have invested in pipelines that bypass part of the Strait of Hormuz, helping reduce dependence on the waterway. However, those alternatives cannot fully replace the enormous volume of oil and natural gas that normally transits the strait. That is why governments, shipping companies, and energy analysts continue to monitor developments in the region so closely. The goal is not simply to protect one waterway, it is to preserve stability in a system that supports economies across every continent. This is why the Strait of Hormuz is never just a regional story. It is a place where geography influences economics, economics shapes diplomacy, and diplomacy can determine the stability of global markets. Few places on Earth possess that level of influence. And that raises one final question. If the Strait of Hormuz is so important to the world, why has Iran remained at the center of strategic confrontation with the United States and Israel for so many years? For decades, the Strait of Hormuz has been more than a shipping route. It has become the meeting point of global power, regional security, and international diplomacy. This is why Iran's relationship with the United States and Israel has attracted worldwide attention for so many years. From Washington's perspective, the uninterrupted flow of energy through the Persian Gulf is considered a vital global economic interest. The United States has long maintained a significant naval presence in the region, working with Gulf partners to help secure commercial shipping lanes and deter threats to maritime trade. Officials argue that stable energy markets benefit not only the United States, but also allies and economies around the world. Israel views the region through a different, though related, security lens. For years, Israeli leaders have expressed concern over Iran's expanding missile capabilities, support for armed regional groups, and elements of its broader nuclear program. Iran, meanwhile, maintains that its military posture is defensive, that its missile program is intended as a deterrent, and that its nuclear activities are peaceful. These competing narratives have shaped one of the most enduring strategic rivalries in the modern Middle East. Yet, beneath the political disagreements lies a deeper reality. None of these tensions exist in isolation. Geography is the constant that never changes. Iran's coastline, the Strait of Hormuz, Bandar Abbas, Qeshm Island, Kharg Island, and Bushehr together form a strategic network that influences military planning, global energy markets, and international diplomacy. Every major decision made in these waters is closely watched because its consequences rarely remain confined to the Middle East. That is why even periods of relative calm never remove the Strait of Hormuz from global attention. A narrow passage, only about 21 miles wide, continues to shape the movement of energy, the calculations of world leaders, the strategies of powerful militaries, and the stability of the global economy. Few places on Earth demonstrate more clearly how geography can influence history. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson of this documentary. The world's balance is not always determined by the largest countries, the biggest armies, or the richest economies. Sometimes it is shaped by a single stretch of water, a handful of islands, and the nation that stands beside them. The Strait of Hormuz is not merely Iran's gateway to the sea, it is one of the gateways through which the modern world continues to function. Every day, millions of people fill their cars with fuel, switch on the lights in their homes, board airplanes, or purchase products shipped from thousands of miles away, without ever thinking about the narrow waterway that helps make it all possible. But now you know, behind every oil tanker crossing the Strait of Hormuz lies a story of geography, strategy, diplomacy, and global interdependence. It is a place where a few kilometers of water can influence markets, reshape foreign policy, and affect the lives of billions of people across the planet. And perhaps that's the most fascinating truth of all. Sometimes, the most powerful place on Earth isn't the biggest country, it's the narrow passage that the world simply cannot afford to lose.